I recently put out a video on overhead slams, and it got a lot more traction than I was expecting. In fact, you could say it got too much traction, because it was wrong. Well, there was some useful stuff in there, but there was also some inaccurate stuff, and there was also some incomplete stuff. So I'm here to set the record straight and to do this properly. This is the all-encompassing overhead slam guide. Big thank you to FFAme and to Keb for setting me on the right track. They took a bunch of time labbing stuff with me, showing me what they already knew, and I've been able to run all of my ideas past them. I will ask that you like and share this video so that it can overtake the last one. Yes, I could just take down the last video, and I plan to do that. But until this video gets picked up by the algorithm, I'm hoping that last video funnels viewers into this one so that they can get the truth. Once this video overtakes it, I'll just take the last one down, so your help with that would be very much appreciated. With all that said, let's just jump straight into it. The overhead slam is a 50 damage attack. That means it does twice as much damage as a regular punch, but it takes longer, about 0.88 seconds in total. About 0.57 seconds of that is the wind up to the attack. After that point, you can cancel it with a web tracer or any other ability of your choice. Now the hitbox seems to be in a cone shape pointed away from the player. That means it's wider closer to you, so the closer you are to your opponent, the less accurate you have to be. The furthest away you can hit someone is 4 meters, which is the same as the kick, but the cone itself is a bit wider than the kick, so when you're up close, it's more forgiving. Now there are two different types of overheads. One of them you get from double jumping, and one of them you get from web swinging. We will just call these jump overheads and swing overheads. Think of this like two on-off switches. You do something to turn it on, and then you do something to turn it off. There's no sort of timer associated with either of these, so once you know the rules, it's usually pretty straightforward to figure out when you do and don't have an overhead. The rules for losing your overhead are pretty straightforward. You get your overhead when you're in the air, and if you touch the ground at any point, you will lose either overhead. You'll also lose your overhead if you use it. You don't get to use as many as you want in a row. That said, if you manage to have both types of overheads at once, you can use them one after the other. And when you do this, the swing overhead will be used first. And the final way of losing your overhead is by using the get over here targeting. That's when an opponent is marked with a web tracer and you zip towards them. This is probably just to slow down your burst damage when you zip to someone, but there are ways around it, which we're going to get into in a moment. But first, let's talk a little bit more about the jump overhead. This is the simpler of the two. This is sometimes also called a double jump overhead or a DJ overhead for short. Now, it's straightforward enough. When you double jump, you get this overhead. And there's one extra way of losing this overhead, which is if you get your double jump back, you lose the overhead. That means using an uppercut, web swinging, wall crawling, or using the symbiote will all take away your overhead. But since all of these are things that give you your double jump back, if you want to use the overhead, you can just double jump again and you'll have it right back. That's pretty much it for the double jump overheads. The swing overheads get a little bit more complicated. Of course, you get one of these by web swinging, but you can also get it by wall crawling, which will give you the exact same kind of overhead. And unlike the jump overhead, if you use an uppercut or a symbiote, you won't lose this one. So if you want to get two overheads in a row, like I mentioned before, you could swing, then double jump, and then you'll have two overheads to use back to back. You cannot, however, double jump, then swing, because by swinging, you would get your double jump back, which means you no longer have the double jump overhead. And since wall crawling also gives you a swing overhead, you can jump from the wall, double jump, and then you'll have two overheads in a row. Now where it gets interesting is with the timing of when you get the overhead. It doesn't happen when you start to swing or in the middle of your swing. It happens at the end of your swing. And this doesn't sound important, but it is. If you do a web zip into a roll animation, you'll notice that throughout your roll, the UI indicator for the web swing stays yellow. In fact, it stays yellow even longer than the roll lasts. And this little icon is telling you how long the game thinks the web lasts for. So if you were to jump before that yellow icon turned white, you would be in the air when your swing ended, meaning you would have a swing overhead. And you didn't lose it from being on the ground after the swing, because you weren't on the ground after the swing as far as the game is concerned. Your swing ended after you jumped. And in exactly the same way, the game gives you a swing overhead at the end of your wall crawl, which is also indicated by the UI. In particular, when your utility icons go from red back to white, your wall crawl is considered to have ended, and that's the moment when you get the overhead. So if you crawl from the wall onto the ground and you jump before those icons turn white, the game will give you an overhead at that moment when you're already in the air, and so the ground can't take it away. And there's a sort of frame perfect version of this, which sounds intimidating, but it's actually very easy. If you use your get over here targeting while your web swing is currently active, the get over here will actually take away your swing overhead before the ending of the swing gives you the swing overhead, which means that once you arrive at your target, you've got an overhead. Now there's one more piece of tech we're going to find useful, and that's called a web whiff. If you were to jump, shoot a web swing at the sky, and hit your primary attack, you would just get a regular punch, and so you might think that your web swing had done nothing. But if you were to do this while falling for a little longer, you would notice you actually do get an overhead, just later than you might expect. Well, shooting your web at the sky is what we call a web whiff or a swing whiff, and it has a unique property where the game thinks it ends way after you get back control. And you can use this to your advantage. If you web whiff, then jump, and then use your primary, you'll notice it's an overhead. This is because the web whiff didn't count as ended until you were already in the air. And something else strange happens. If you continue to hold your primary, you get punch, overhead, kick. And if you didn't know, the normal sequence is punch, punch, kick. So is the overhead replacing that second punch? Well, this wouldn't make much sense, because if you weave the overhead into the punch combo, you get punch, overhead, punch, kick. So what's different here? Well, if we do this to one of the test dummies, what you'll notice is the second punch is actually doing damage. It's move stacking with the overhead slam. So what's really going on here is the overhead slam does not cancel regular punches. Instead, it just plays its animation over the top and you get a move stack. You would usually never notice this because it's impossible to smoothly transition from your primary attack into an overhead without some sort of interruption. The double jump will totally interrupt your punch, a web swing will interrupt your punch, and a wall crawl will interrupt your punch. A web whiff is the only way to get them truly back to back. And so you can layer this overhead over the top of any of the hits in your regular 3-hit combo. This is probably going to get patched, so check the description to see if it's still there. I'll try to keep it updated. Now the web whiff also means that you can get a double overhead without using a double jump. If you web swing into the air, then web whiff, you can use your swing overhead before the swing whiff ends, and when the swing whiff ends, you get another overhead which you can use right away. The last noteworthy interaction is another way to keep your overhead through the get over here. If you web whiff right before targeting to your opponent, then the targeting will start before the web whiff ends, meaning you will keep your overhead. So that's pretty much it. I hope this helped. If you've got any questions, leave them down below. I'll do my best to answer everyone. That's all for now. Cheers.